The Texans, coming off of the bye week, have a prove-it game in prime time against the Seahawks. We're going to talk about that and more on this edition of the Bullpen.
To throw the punches away. He floats one wide open. And there he goes. Touchdown. For a Texan touchdown.
Hello and welcome to the Bullpen. As always, I am James Roy, and with me is Tom Chavarria. Tom, how are you doing today?
I am starved for Texans football. I've watched all the other football. I'm even watching like Monday night games on teams that I don't necessarily care for. Normally Bears, Commanders, not something I'm going, oh man, let me pull up my seed for. It's actually been a really good game. But yeah, I'm just right now, I'm like, where's the Texans at?
Yeah, I got a chance to lock in a little more on fantasy football this week. I've never been one to really tune into NFL Red Zone, but I gave it a shot this week.
You're missing out.
I think it's a solid viewer experience. I'm still very much in favor of one game at a time, but the only reason that I'm in favor of that is because if the Texans are on, I don't need to see every other touchdown in the league. I just need to see what the Texans are doing. In this case, as someone who is watching purely out of an interest in fantasy football, it's the perfect viewing experience. So it's truly awesome. Also, just kind of, since we're getting the episode started, I'd like to challenge any company out there, because obviously at the beginning of the season it's very controversial that Red Zone got rid of the commercial free part of the tagline and added commercials. I saw them. It wasn't anything major to me. Obviously, as someone newer to viewing, maybe I'm missing something, but my challenge is any of those major companies out there that want to, get right by their, consumer audience. I propose you do this. Ask NFL Red Zone what they're being paid by all these other companies for their ads, which, by the way, is like in total, like maybe 4 minutes of ads over the course of a 7-hour period. It's not a lot. Ask them how much they're being paid for that, and then say, hey, we'll pay you that much and a little bit more. And all you have to say, pay you that much and more to not run ads. And all you have to do is at the end of, say 7 hours of commercial free football provided by our company. I can't imagine there's a company out there that wouldn't pay to be the reason why there's not commercials on NFL Red Zone. I mean, I feel like it's a pretty good proposition. I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, there's so much there, right? Like the fact that you're new to Red Zone means that you're definitely not gambling on this like I am. Like daily fantasy, you need that bad boy. It's amazing. As soon as the Texans are done, I'm touchdown hunting on the Red Zone. It's been great for a long time, and I think that's where the main group of people that are very upset with ads and commercials and such. It's like, look, I want nonstop action. I have like 7 different tickets and I have all these different players and I'm watching them to see, DraftKings has a pretty famous Millie Maker contest they run every weekend. It's $20 most times. Sometimes it's cheaper. Somebody wins $1 million every weekend. And that sweat, they call it the sweat at the end when you're watching, yard by yard, line by line, you kind of just want to be absolutely locked into that. And I mean, I guess you could have, Sunday Ticket and do it that way. But for a lot of people, the Red Zone has been the way to go. Look, you're only giving me scoring drives or the closest guy to the end zone all the time. That's all I need. And it's been great. I don't complain about it now currently because I don't have Red Zone, so I'm not missing anything. But as a guy that did, I understand the gripe. I just don't see anybody willing to pay to not have the ads. So like, what am I gaining? Like, I don't know if that company's getting the publicity that they would want by saying, oh, we're blocking the ads for you. Love us.
I think every moment that passes from then, like at the beginning of the season, if like before the season started, a company stepped in and said, hey, we're going to pay you to not run ads. Tell everyone we're doing that. It could have been a cool ad scheme to like, make them look really good in the eyes of the public as that time passes, as is typical, right? Like I think, Netflix adding ads, like a lot of those like streaming services that are meant to get rid of cable that we pay for that now show us ads, people kind of get over that over time. So as time passes, I don't think it'll be a big deal. But to me, the reason I talk about it the way I do is because a lot of the feedback I see on social media over Red Zone is like that is a low IQ football fan way of watching football. And to that I say, I think it's perfect if you've got money on the game, if you want to see every score because that's what you've bet on. If you're playing fantasy football, it's the perfect way to consume football because it's just the scores. But I think it contributes to a culture in the sports, the sport fandom of the NFL, where people are, stat watchers. They just look for the highlights and they don't get the nuance of a whole game. Because I can tell you this season, there's been 5 different times the Texans have played, and there's been 5 different times where you could say by looking at the stat sheet one thing, and you could say an entirely different thing about the game based off of just watching it. So I think that as someone who, hosts a podcast talking about the Texans, if I told you that week in and week out, my primary form of viewership of football was NFL Red Zone, you could easily disregard my opinion on anything to do with the Texans because I'm only seeing their highlights. So from that perspective, I understand it. And that's why I prefer to watch a whole game. I think the compromise is we're living in 2025. If I really wanted to, I would add a second screen right next to my primary TV, and I would have the Texans game on the main TV and NFL Red Zone on the side TV. And I think that's the ideal viewing experience as someone who's deeply entrenched in fantasy football. Because the other part of it is that like, if I'm entrenched in fantasy football, I'm watching the Texans game, but I'm also on my phone watching my fantasy scores. And so there's some amount of your attention that's taken away from the TV but that's always the trade-off when you're trying to pay attention to more than one thing at a time. So I don't know. This has been a really insightful conversation on football viewership in general, but I'm here to talk about the Texans, and I know you are too. So with that, let's dive in. The Texans play the Seahawks in prime time, Monday Night Football, and surprisingly enough, they got the later of the two doubleheader games. It's not really surprising when you consider that the Seahawks are a West Coast team, and that Lions and Buccaneers fans were not going to stay up until midnight watching a game. No, they would, but why would you put them through that when you could just put the Texans fan base through that? So anyway, let's look at the key matchups for this one. One of the key matchups is time. How do you think that this late start affects the players? Because obviously fans, it's going to be here or there, whether or not there's even viewership from Houston of this game, just because of how late it starts. It's really going to test those people that are loyal to the soil, ready to support the Texans whenever. But from the perspective of the field, traveling back 2 hours in time, starting a game at what is basically 10 o'clock your own time, how do you think that affects this Texans team?
I really don't think it's going to affect the Texans team. I think they're going to have plenty of time to get acclimated. I think, there's been a lot said about the fan base not showing up on time to games in Houston. So the fact that you have a late start game is probably like, look, bro, it's as late as it can go. You should be front and center as soon as it starts, right?
The kids will be asleep before it starts, so you're good.
There you go. The older fan base that keeps a schedule and wants to be in bed at a certain hour is not going to be happy with, the time slot. For, I think, the majority, it's a chance to be seen on prime time. And I think, a lot of people want that recognition for your team. Primetime games mean you're a worthy team. They just don't give it to anybody. There has to be players or some sort of rivalry. There has to be something that drives that, for them to sell it to everyone else, right? Because they're not trying to market to the local market with a primetime game. They're trying to, bring in fan bases from other markets to watch the program. So for me, it's a good way to showcase this amazing defense the Texans have. It's really, like you said, you called it perfectly. It's a prove it game. They're going to prove to a lot of people that what we've seen the last 2 weeks is for real. If they can do it in front of the national media, in front of the national spotlight, on a stage that is only reserved for good teams.
I agree with you. And in that same vein, I think it's one of the most poorly scheduled primetime games for the Texans this year. For obvious reasons, like we just said, it starts at 10 o'clock in the central time zone. So it'll be a tough watch from that perspective.
Starts at 9 o'clock here.
It starts at 9 o'clock. Mm-hmm. Maybe I missaw it. Anyways, I thought someone posted that it started at 10. Maybe I don't know. Either way, it's a late start, so it's going to be tough to get. I thought it was one of those games where they were doing like the complete first game and then starting the second game. That's why I believed that it was at 10.
I think it is that way because it's at 9 o'clock. Like the other one's going to start at like 7, so it'll be like 2 hours. Let me double check.
Yeah, you take a look at that. But either way, I'm not super concerned about that from the players' perspective. I think it's been done before. I do think it's kind of a disservice to the fans. As someone who is really excited to see the Texans get more primetime games, I feel like it's very poorly scheduled relative to the other ones they've had so far. Have pretty much been on par with what you would expect. So, but I think that as football players, you kind of get used to playing when you need to. And I'd hope they have their routines for that to be adjusted and ready to go. But you, once you have that information, let me know. But
so the first game will start at 6 o'clock Central, and the last game will start at 9 o'clock Central.
Geez,
yeah,
that's crazy. But the person who posted it must have been out on the East Coast then.
Probably.
That's probably what it was, or maybe I was looking at the East Coast time instead of the Central time. Either way, let's get into some other key matchups. So Sam Darnold has come out to Seattle. It's been a true test of what happened in Minnesota. Was it real? Was it what we can expect from him moving forward? And so far, Sam Darnold has been able to play really well. He's kept that offense kind of humming. And he's probably, to me, one of the main reasons why Seattle is a formidable opponent. As good as our defense is, looking at Seattle as a team, that's one of the reasons that I see them as a challenge. Do you think that this secondary will find any challenge with him, Jackson Smith and Jigba, and just the receivers in general that they will face in this game?
I mean, from what I've heard, I want to say there was like an Good Morning NFL thing on one of their games a couple weeks back, where they talked about why Sam Darnold has been so good, and it's because it's the exact same offense he's been running, and it was the same. I don't think it was the same offensive coordinator, but it was basically the same language. They were showing plays when he was in Minnesota. They were showing plays when he was in Seattle, and they were basically the exact same play, exact same design, and you're just swapping out people. So he feels comfortable in that system, and that's why he's been so successful. I think it's going to be really, really interesting to see how the Texans defense stacks up against this team that scored a lot of points. They've looked really good the last few weeks in being able to get into a shootout with Tampa Bay and then just kind of score enough and put away Jacksonville. So I feel like, this is going to be a barometer for the Texans. They've got tons of weapons. So it'll be really interesting to see. The key matchup for me is going to be Jackson Smith and Jigba and Derek Stingley Jr. I think that should be box office.
Yeah, and I believe the Seahawks coordinator is Clint Kubiak, a last name that Texans fans should be familiar with, a guy that I think a lot of people wanted out in Houston, and he's got that offense going in a way that looks really impressive. And to speak to your point about the Jaguars playing the Seahawks and losing 20-12 last week, this Texans team also clobbered the Ravens. A lot of people gave the Texans grief for that. And then the Rams, who the Texans lost to by one score, just barely, basically one drive away from winning that game. The Rams struggled with the Ravens. They ended up winning only 17-3. So in a league that has so much parity and where the discussion point around this game is going to be a lot of, this is a game that could really prove it for the Texans because they haven't played anybody. Relative matchup stuff is going to play huge in this. And so I think that I think the Jaguars losing this matchup plays back into this being a game that could prove a lot for the Texans, but also looking at how the Rams performed against the Ravens, I don't think every matchup is exactly that. So we'll have to see. I don't think it's just going to be about getting a win in Seattle. And I know you hate when I say this. It will, to some extent, be about how it looks. I'd have trouble now to clarify that. I have trouble believing the Texans look bad beating Seattle. There's very few parts of me that can see a game where the Texans play like they did the first 3 weeks on offense and come away with a win. So they would, to me, they would have to look good to win in Seattle, or Seattle would have to look really bad if that's what happens. But like you always say, and I agree with you on this, like good teams get the win. So no matter how it happens, it will be good and it will reflect very positively on the Texans. But I won't be sitting there being ignorant of what happened if the Texans do look bad while doing it. But like I said, I just have a lot of trouble believing that that's possible at this point. This is the kind of team where you don't typically get the opportunity to look bad against and win, especially in the prime time spotlight. So looking defensively, is there any, looking offensively for the Texans, this Seattle defense has been the past couple weeks without a bit of its talent. I believe Woolen has been sat, and a couple of their members of their secondary that are guys that have been out at least a week or so and could be returning soon. How do you think that impacts the game plan from Nick Caley? Do you think that a lot of what we saw these past few weeks can translate into this matchup, or maybe do you see some adjustments needing to be made based off of the Legion of Boom? The descendants of the Legion of Boom, I should say, come in, to play the Texans.
I don't know that there's anybody there that would call themselves the Legion of Boom. I was gonna say that's yeah. That's something that certain era they were a different breed. They had monsters everywhere, and I don't know that this version of Seattle's defense would say that for a second. It'd be like calling this Texans defense the Bulls on Parade. Right. Which I think this defense has a chance to be better than that, but that's a conversation for another day. Yeah. I really feel like this team, it's going to be the same thing we've always talked about. Can they protect CJ Stroud? Like, I know I've seen some chatter and I've had some conversations, and people want to say, well, the offensive line hasn't been that good or hasn't been that bad. They've been better, and pieces of it have. But as a whole, I still think you're still giving up sacks, you're still giving up pressures. Some of that is on CJ, yes, but if the level of team goes up, does that level of pressure go up? That's going to be the question for me. The last couple weeks, CJ stayed pretty clean, and when he got in trouble, a lot of it was of his own doing, of his own making, holding on to the ball too long. I think this week it's going to be very important that they protect him, because they were able to get after Trevor Lawrence last week a lot. They had Baker Mayfield running around for his life a little bit when they played 2 weeks ago. So I don't know how you would compare lines, but if you think that either of those lines are better than what the Texans got, there's a good chance they could be coming for CJ a little bit.
Yeah, and I look at Juice Scruggs specifically when you say all that, which is a leak point, but I also look at this, right? And this plays into, I think one of the important parts of this matchup is winning this matchup. And winning that can be defined a lot of ways, but looking at the past 2 weeks, they're the only 2 weeks that the Texans have been below the median pressure rate on quarterbacks in the NFL, which I believe is approximately 32.6%. So continuing that trend of being below that, and if you can, being below it significantly, will massively elevate this team. I look back to matchups where other quarterbacks the Texans have played who are really good have faltered when the pressure is applied, which is why I'm a little, I don't want to say lighter on CJ over that subject, but it has to be understood that he is being put under a lot of pressure when a good defensive line comes against this good offensive line. I look at Justin Herbert in the wild card against the Texans. The Texans got so much pressure on him. He threw 5 interceptions after basically not throwing any the entire season. It was crazy to see that, but that's what pressure can do to even the best of quarterbacks. And that's why I just on the other side of the ball with Sam Darnold, I would suspect that could be something that could work. And when the Texans played Sam Darnold in Minnesota, that was something they couldn't do, was get pressure on him, which is, the Minnesota Vikings had their way with the Texans in that game. I don't know if you remember. That's one of the few games in recent memory I can think of where the Texans truly got dominated. Like, not even the defense was able to do anything to make the game look closer than it was. It was simply a blowout. So I think that a big part of it is going to be stopping the pressures from coming in and letting CJ flow. We've seen, already Nick Caley make a lot of adjustments to this offense, and I think it's progressed a lot. And I, like you said, there are parts of this offensive line that have made huge steps. Shout out to you, Ed Ingram, who is playing, no joke, based off PFF at the very least, and the eye test I think holds up as one of the best guards in the NFL right now. I think per PFF, he has the highest PFF grade of any guard in the NFL, which is crazy to think. But like we've spoken to, that's basically the ideal outcome from Nick Caserio's approach to fixing the offensive line this offseason, was for Ed Ingram to show out like that. And, it doesn't hurt that Jake Andrews is also having a solid season. So I think that it'll probably be this way throughout the rest of the season, pretty much. It's going to come down to, can the O-line play to the level we've seen them play against the Titans and the Ravens? Because if they can do that, then this offense is serviceable. And if this offense is serviceable, the defense will do the rest. That's really it. It doesn't have to be, a light show. This past week, Patrick Mahomes found his mojo. It goes for 350 and a few touchdowns, like really lights up the stat sheet. CJ doesn't have to do that every week. He has a defense that can lock down literally anyone, but we do need, 250 and a touchdown or two would be pretty nice. And I think we can get that if the O-line shows up. So looking at this, one last talking point before we get into our score predictions, and we've kind of alluded to it. We've talked to it a bit throughout, and I know it's your least favorite topic. I said that last time I brought it up in this episode. But a quality win is going to be a big talking point around this win. The Texans winning this game could very heavily shift the paradigm. I've already talked to my thoughts on like how this win even has to look, if that even matters and all that. But how do you think that this win shifts the paradigm for the Texans if they can get it? If the Texans go into, the 12 and they pick up a win against the Seahawks, how does that, as a 3-3 team, look?
You're talking about like to the outside? You're talking about to the
how does the paradigm shift in how they're viewed outside of Houston, like just nationally? Does this significantly do like any sort of restoration to the Texans' image as far as it was torn down over the first 3 games of the season?
I think it brings them back to status quo. It brings them back to 500. I think when they talk about the Texans, and to speak to your quality win, not quality win, no one's going to care. You're the people in Houston that dwell on that stuff will care, but I don't think that anyone else is going to say, if they win a 17-15 ball game where they kick a bunch of field goals, and no one's going to care. Like I think it's very important that they just get the win, however they get it. And while you hate that I say that, I think that when these things are so valuable, yes, we could always hope and dream for them to just go nuts. And Nico's got 102 tutties, and we'll say Woody Marks has got 102 tutties, and they score 45 points and they win, 45-10. Just same way they beat the Ravens. Just recreate it. But it doesn't work like that. Teams will tell you, like, I guarantee you, when Buffalo went into this game with Atlanta on Monday night, they would have told you they'd have took any win. They wouldn't care how he got it. Instead, they're getting on a plane. They're going home as a loser for the second week in a row. Like, you just want to survive in advance. It's kind of like the NCAA tournament. You don't care how you get there. You don't care if it's a last second buzzer beater. You win by 30. Just get me through to the next game.
I feel you on that. And so I'll never be frustrated with a win. I think we've both established that. But this defense is historically good. It is, on a level that rarely we have seen. It is a point in terms of points allowed, the ability to just shut down other teams. It's at a level. And if you're thinking of defenses that played at that level, that won Super Bowls, that you can pretty much solely assign the blame to the defense in terms of, or at least I should say credit to the defense for that win. You go back to the Ravens and you think back to who's playing quarterback for that team and the conversations that he's in and how he is referenced in the history books. And the frustrating part to me, and why and obviously, like I said, a win is a win, but why I'd like to see more from the offense is because I don't want it to become a talking point on the off chance that the Texans do go really deep this year, go all the way, make it happen, and it's a defensive dominance that gets them there. I don't want it to become a thing of, so like CJ Stroud's basically Trent Dilfer. Like, that's not a talking point you ever want to have, especially like when and if the Texans ever get to be bad again, like to that point that they've been for a lot of their history. There's already been that. I've seen that talking point online where people are like, it's so difficult talking ball with people when your team is bad because as soon as you make a good point, they just go, dude, isn't this guy like a Texans fan? That's like what it's like to be a Browns fan or like, a Jets fan is just like getting your opinion disregarded because your team sucks. And I think, I don't know if you have, but throughout most of my life, growing up as in high school when the Texans were, getting really bad after coming off of a really good stretch, I was subjected to a lot of that mentality. And so one thing that would really make that 10 times worse in these future conversations, hypothetically, that I'm putting myself in with other people is to have, not only is this guy a Texans fan, isn't your quarterback like the second coming of Trent Dilfer? He only got a Super Bowl because his defense was good. And that is not a conversation I would like to have. It's not a conversation I anticipate I will have to have, but like, that's where my mind goes when I think about like, can this offense please figure it out and be good so that I don't have to think about CJ Stroud and Trent Dilfer in the same breath, is really what it comes down to.
Here's the really funny thing. You talk about a quality win and how if it's not good, you're not looking forward to it. And the assumption that you're making automatically is that a bad win is the defense locks the other team down and the offense scores just enough to win and they don't look good doing it. And for me, if I was going to play your game, that's not a bad win for me. You know what a bad win is? The defense getting torched for 500 yards and 5 touchdowns, and they win a shootout in which the defense never looked good. And you're like, wait, is our defense really that good, or were they just pretending? And you could play it the other way. For me, I don't understand this argument that people make because every week is its own war and you just hope that you win more than you lose and then you make it to the playoffs. And it's like, we love this defense and the defense is phenomenal. And you feel like every week they're just going to go in there and lock somebody up. But we felt that way going into that Minnesota game and they got absolutely cooked. So it can happen. Now, I don't go into any week I don't ever think, man, I hope the defense plays good, or man, I hope the offense plays good. I just hope the team wins and everything works out the way we want it. You have fans. There's guys that, do stuff and they're like, oh no, I need to see this from this group. I need to see this. They can't do that. Penalties can't be crazy. And that could all happen and they could still win. And would I sit here and tell you it was a bad win? Absolutely not.
I feel you on that. And I mean, I don't know, external view, right? If I can say that CJ Stroud threw for 470 yards, 3 or 4 touchdowns, and the Texans won by, 43 to 36 in what was a shootout. To me, and I see your point on that, because like that's not a good game defensively.
And not just that, like in Jigba cooking Stingley all day, going for like $150 and 3 scores. Then are we questioning Stingley? No.
The thing is that a win can cure all when the team is good. When the team is bad, a win can only do so much, and a win can always cure poor defense. In my opinion, a poor defensive game can always be cured by a win, but a poor offensive game is less likely to be cured by a win. If you come through and win the first question, and here's what it is, right? Every fan goes to this scenario. This is a common talking point, and this is why this is the way it is. You go, okay, 2 minutes left. You know, you're down by 6 points. You need a quarterback to go down and put up a touchdown and get the extra point to win the game. Who do you take? Who is your guy? Peyton Manning, Tom Brady. You know, all those are the quarterbacks that talked about when I was growing up. But you'd go through and you talk about that, and be like, well, Tony Romo has the most fourth quarter comebacks. So, well, actually, it's Eli Manning that has the most fourth quarter comebacks of any quarterback. So who would you rather put in the game in that situation? And you know what? No one asks. No one's asking, which middle linebacker would you rather have in the game commanding the defense to stop a 2-minute drill? No one is asking about the defense's capability to stop it. They're asking about an offense's ability to come through. Which one would you rather have? Would you rather have a quarterback that you are certain, beyond a shadow of a doubt, can take the team down and score a touchdown when it matters? Or would you rather have a defense that you have a lot of confidence in to stop the other team? Maybe, as long as the quarterback's not too good, as long as the situation's not too big. The defense is going to, the other part of it is the defense plays the whole game. And depending on how the offense does, the defense could atrophy really quickly. And when that 2-minute drill comes in, we've seen defenses in Houston, we've seen really good defenses falter when the time comes because they spent too much time on the field. So offense plays a core part in how good a defense can be with how good it. I'm going all over the place with this, but the point is that I want confidence that my offense can go down and score. And I think a lot of times it makes people take defense for granted because I also want my defense to be able to stop that offense from scoring when it is the other team's offense. But people are very one-track minded. And so the main conversation, it's never which defense would you rather have on the field with Peyton Manning driving the field with 2 minutes left to stop him from taking the lead back. It's always which quarterback would you rather have on the field if you had 2 minutes left. It's never about the defense. And that's not because it shouldn't be. And I'm thankful that D'Amico has put together an excellent defense in Houston, one of the best. And I hope and pray that this defense can take the Texans to the Super Bowl, regardless of how the offense does. That would be great. I would be happy with a Super Bowl win that was fueled by the defense. I would not be happy to be having the conversations that would need to be had about the offense years down the road, because I would hate to hear CJ's name referenced in the same sentence as Trent Dilfer. But
you're already there in year 3. Like if he doesn't shine right now, he can't fix it.
No, that's the thing, is that people are not looking at Trent Dilfer as first round pick who played a lot of years and had a solid career. All he is referenced as is the guy the Ravens found to stand behind the center so that the defense could take them to a Super Bowl. After a whole career that, while not shining and not the best career quarterback has ever had, was not like something to be laughed at. He did it in the league for a really long time, but all he's known for is that. So CJ will have plenty of time to overcome that. And so that's another reason why I don't suspect I'll have that conversation, but it leaves the door open to that. That's what it does.
You know who else was a very, very poor quarterback that no one talks about in that sense?
Who?
Dan Orlovsky. Dan Orlovsky led the Lions to like one of the longest losing streaks ever. And now when he speaks, it's gospel. So the point that you're making.
Well, no, 1 minute. Let's not gloss over the fact that every time that he makes a point on social media, if you check his quote tweets, you'll find at least 10 people that are quoting that tweet and showing the video of him running out of the back of the end zone for the Lions. So
of course.
It's not without reference to that. Kurt Benkert barely got any snaps in the NFL, has a negative yardage total, and people that have never played football before are the first to call him out on it when he makes a good point about football. So I see your point there. People that have played poor football and played it for a long time can make good points and can be high up there. I agree. I respect Dan Orlovsky's opinion.
But again, this is the same guy who's like, CJ's a stud. And I agree with him. Now, the whole narrative that, okay, he has to do it on the field or else, I guarantee you Trent Dilfer's not giving up his Super Bowl ring. I know he recently got fired as a coach somewhere, like the last couple of days. It's tough. He's catching all these strays right now. I feel bad for him.
Sorry, Trent. We respect you and congrats on your Super Bowl.
I missed the Dilfer's dimes, not gonna lie. But you know, I just don't care about all these different well, I need my quarterback to be that dude. I guarantee you tonight, when Allen played Penix, nobody's going, Atlanta can't win. They got Penix. That defense went out there and made Allen look average. And if you're telling me that you're going to give me a defense that can do that can make a good quarterback look average, I'm going to opt for that all the time, because you can find an average quarterback anywhere. This league has proven that. There are people that won't give Brock Purdy any credit because he's an average quarterback. And it's like, all he does
Brock
is
Purdy
plays.
has also had plenty of opportunities to take that team all the way and has never been able to do it. So an average quarterback can do it. It can be done, but the easier path and the more common path to winning Super Bowls, if we look back at the recent string of Super Bowl winners, is first round pick at quarterback who is above average at the very least. Like it can't be a guy who's just, and to be fair, Brock Purdy, in my opinion, is above average. He just hasn't been able to get over the hump, and he's been above average with an excellent defense. I think that the 49ers have just had a really bad string of injuries, but there's a number, these conversations aren't being had if Brock Purdy in the Super Bowl comes through and plays at that level and the defense locks down the other team. But in those big moments, sometimes it comes down to whose quarterback is better. Like a lot of times in the playoffs, that's what it comes down to. In the regular season, a defense will play and it'll be an unstoppable force. And then in the postseason, it doesn't always play out that way. The two Super Bowls I can think of where defense was, in recent memory, not looking back all the way to the Ravens, but in recent memory, Super Bowls that I watched all the way through, the Legion of Boom shutting down Peyton Manning was huge. They basically crushed the number one offense in the league. And then the Broncos crushing Cam Newton, number 1 and 2 offense in the league, Broncos and Panthers. And then the number 1 defense versus what was a very average defense from the Panthers turned out to be the difference. So
Didn't the Bears do it to Manning too?
Yeah, but Manning won that game. That was the thing, is that the Bears defense was really good. Grossman was an average quarterback. Peyton Manning was playing good and had, I can't speak to how good that defense was from the Colts. I don't remember, but I know that Peyton Manning stepped up and played a game that won them the game. The quarterback was the difference. And it's very commonly how games go, is the quarterback is the difference. So speaking to what you said earlier, of how you consider a bad game to be a shootout. Yeah, but if you're in a shootout, you don't want to be in a shootout with 22. You want to be in a shootout with a freaking Glock 19 at the very least. If you're, you want to have a nice, capable, reliable.
I don't understand the narrative though. I don't understand where people are like, I need to be able to make this definitive decision right now. 5 games into his 3rd season, if he can't do it now, he's not ever going to be able to. And I
don't think we need to make the decision now. I'm just saying, like, when I speak on a lot of this stuff, I know it bothers you. I'm a very hypothetical person, and I like to speak to hypothetical situations that may or may not exist. Maybe that's why I've gained so many followers on social media. It's commonplace in the sports aggregator world to create an enemy that doesn't exist and then get people riled up about it. And as much as I don't like that, sometimes I do it because that's just how I am as a person. I'm just like, man, I can't believe this situation that hasn't really happened and might happen, but really might not happen, has to happen and might happen, but it hasn't. And now I have to be mad about it. So I think that's half of what sports media is just talking about hypothetical situations that may or may not come to be. And that's how I am as a person. It's probably why I enjoy doing this so much, but
I enjoy doing it, but being much like this hat, being very black and white.
Very black and white.
I only want to speak to what is and what has been. The hypotheticals don't do it for me. I don't want to sit there and say, anything negative or overhype something and then be so grossly wrong a year, 6 months, whatever down the road for the sake of talking. You know what I mean? That's never going to be where I come from.
Yeah, I don't do, I honestly, and that's the difference between me and I feel like there's a lot of those pages on Twitter that'll post click headlines that are very, here's a fake enemy I created. Please talk about this talking point that doesn't really exist. And I don't do that on purpose. It's just kind of how my brain works sometimes. But speaking of talking to real things that really happen, Tom and I, obviously these previews don't usually go this long, but we've had a minute with the bye week.
Rants,
so
baby.
the rants are back, guys. So if you're still with us, thanks for sticking with us. We're going to get into our score predictions for this week. So Tom, I'm really curious to see, I've said it following the Titans game that I didn't suspect that I would pick the Texans to win for a really long time. They're entering a stretch of like 5 games where they're playing teams that currently sit at 4-2. Obviously, early in the season, some of those teams will probably look a lot different by the time the Texans get to them. But I'm interested to see this first game in that stretch, how you feel about Texans versus Seahawks.
Well, if I'm only going off of what they came out of, if I'm only going off of their last couple of games, I feel really good about this game. I really feel like the Texans are in a really good spot offensively. You're seeing CJ be more decisive with the football. If we get that guy who's taking the checkdowns, taking what the defense is going to give him and not trying to extend every play, I think they had a really good chance to win this football game. Obviously, you know, the Seahawks have been hot as of late, at least offensively, I want to say. They've been able to score at will. I really feel like this will be a really tough challenge for them because, you know, this is a defense that doesn't give up a ton of points. So with that being said, I feel like this is a 24-14 Texans win. And I know that won't make it in Vegas and everybody's going to call me crazy, and I'm okay with that. I feel like Dilfer, I'm sorry, did I say Dilfer? Darnold. You see what I did there?
There you go.
My bad.
There you go.
Darnold is going to make some mistakes, and I think the Texans are going to capitalize. And once the defense gets up and they get up, I feel like they're going to make Seattle very one-dimensional, and I like their chances when they do that.
I'm gonna give a little spoiler alert. I am not taking the Texans here, so for fear of depriving people of the storybook ending for too many weeks, I'm gonna let you, since you still have the optimism that they can win this game, which I have optimism they can win, but my score prediction is not going to reflect that. So can you give us a storybook ending on this one?
Absolutely. And I'll do it from the defensive perspective because I feel like that's how this game will end. I think the Texans are going to be up 21-14. Seattle's going to be driving. I think you know they're gonna pick up a couple first downs, and then Will Anderson's going to come off the edge and get a big sack and put them in second and very, very long. I think from there they're going to make a couple pass plays that don't work out. You know, the defense is going to bow up. I think you're going to see them try to attack Derek Stingley Jr. I think that's a mistake. He's going to pick that off. They're going to come down the field, kick a field goal, and we're talking about a 24-14, very solid win on the road in prime time. And, you know, there'll be a lot of people that'll be up late want to talk about it.
Yeah, I will be up late want to talk about it. That's for sure. I love your prediction, and I hope and pray that it comes true. I'm going to go with a 17-14 loss for the Texans. I think it's hard fought, low scoring. I think two good defenses, a lot more solid offense on the Seahawks side. So this makes me feel a lot better about the end result because the defense holding the Seahawks offense to such a low scoring affair, and the offense keeping us in range to win is a huge plus. But and there's part of me, right? There's part of me that's like, if I say that I think the Texans are going to lose, maybe they will win. To be fair, the Texans have won one game when I said they were going to win it out of, the first 4, and they've only won one game where I didn't say they were going to win it, and that's the only prediction I made. So I would maybe keep that streak alive. Little superstition there, but I'll go 17-14, and it'll be like a last second field goal. I think it'll be close, and I think that Jason Myers over there in Seattle, their kicker, will just be the one who finishes it off at the last second. So with that, Tom, do you have any final thoughts before we bring this thing to a close?
Yeah, I think no matter what happens, I really feel good about where the Texans are. I think that, they can go over there, lose the game, and it not be gloom and doom where everybody's like, the offense is trash, or, the defense should have done better because, they allowed them to drive down the field for a last second field goal, because that'll be a conversation too if it comes to pass where it's like, you needed one stop to force overtime or whatever and couldn't get it. I mean, the first couple weeks, the defense wasn't able to close stuff out, and people question the defense, and it's like, dude, they didn't give up hardly any points. I don't understand, but we'll see what happens there. And I think once they get back home, they'll have a stretch of games at home, get some home cooking, and maybe get on a little streak.
Yeah, I feel that. Like I said, I hope your prediction's true, and I think that the defense can do it. I like the point you made there because like it makes me think back to the Buccaneers game with that missed tackle from Toa Toa. It's like obviously it directly affects the outcome, but the offense didn't show up, and that's that's the reason why we're in that situation in the first place. So I'd like to see a continuation of this offensive explosion from the Texans, to show that they can continue to do it even against teams that are like actually good. I think that these past 2 weeks have been really good for Nick Caley's confidence as a play caller, CJ Stroud's confidence as a quarterback, making adjustments at the line of scrimmage. We've already seen the fruits of that with that touchdown to Jaden Higgins, which we can say was due to an adjustment made by CJ. And overall, yeah, just looking forward. A late, albeit, but I'm looking forward to an exciting game where I hope the Texans can come out on top. Thanks for tuning into this edition of the Bullpen. I have been James Roy. You can find me at James Roy NFL wherever you get your social media. At Thomas Chavarria over here is TC Tom1 on Instagram and Third Coast Tom on Twitter. And we are the Bullpen, the #1 veteran-run Texans podcast in the Northern Hemisphere, as well as the universe, until proven otherwise. So thank you for watching. As always, stay classy, Houston, and vamos Texans. Thanks for tuning into The Bullpen, a Texans podcast. Please like, comment, subscribe, and follow along for more Texans talk from The Bullpen.